This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of multi-practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. Today's guest is someone I'm excited to talk with. He's a dedicated optometrist renowned for his expertise in contact lens technology and ocular disease management. With extensive experience in toric, bifocal, and dry eye contact lenses, he is actively involved in pioneering research on contacts and ophthalmic pharmaceuticals, utilizing cutting-edge technology. He frequently lectures nationwide on topics such as ocular disease, ocular medications, contact lenses, and practice management, sharing his passion for advancing the eye care industry. He is the owner and optometrist at Kannarr EyeCare. Please welcome Dr. Shane Kannarr. Shane, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to have this conversation. I think it'll be fun.
Me too.
So Shane, I know we mentioned in your bio that you like to talk about practice management, but I wanted to touch base a little bit first with you on, some of the secret sauce that got you to where you are today. So, if you had to distill it down, what is it that helped you grow and build your empire?
Well, empire is a big word, but I think our practice has definitely grown because of our focus on patient care, and we want to deliver the highest level of patient care we can across the full scope of optometry to the people who need it. We want to improve their lives. In fact, our mission statement is changing people's lives through innovative eye care. And I think that's really been our guiding principle. And I think when you do those things, other items, not without management, but fall into place.
Gotcha. Yeah. Tell me, so I know a lot of folks say that, right? Can you give me an example of how you had to make a tough decision and that was your guiding principle through the tough decision? Can you think of an example like that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can think of multiple examples like that. One thing being a little different in a rural community, when this practice first opened, now we have 5 ODs, a 6th about to join. But when this practice first opened, it was just me. But we also realized, and I think it's something we have to talk about in our profession, emergencies don't happen between 8 and 5, Monday through Thursday. And, we knew we needed to be available on call and had a young family at the time. And it's not easy to make that decision to come in and see patients and do those things. But at the same time, we did it and we provided that care. And that's been a big driver in our practice. If you see somebody with eye pain at 2:30 in the morning, they're probably referring their family and friends.
Yeah.
I can think of others, examples. I'll tell you a great story. Saw a patient that had an emergency, but he also had no glasses and no job. His wife was unemployed. And this was right during the COVID period. We provided glasses and let him make a few payments and then just kind of let it all go away. Never thought another thing about it. I recently saw him. He brought his whole family in. They were now employed. You don't hear this often, but the gentleman said, since you helped me out, I've been waiting till I had insurance and a job and we could come in and get our eye care, and we now can. And those are just a couple examples.
I think that's an awesome example of how your values translated into helping someone that is just a byproduct of helping the business as well. And so when you were going through your growth cycle, tell us a little bit about some things you ran into that you didn't necessarily expect that would happen.
There's a few things. One would be, you have to invest to grow, right? And that's the scary thing. And I see optometry especially kind of short-sighted on that. They're like, I want all the need there, and I want to show that this will pay for itself from day one, and then I'll make that move. I'll buy that piece of equipment. I'll open that second office. I'll hire another doctor. But the reality is you're going to have to invest in your practice time after time, and you're going to see that those investments don't always pay for themselves initially. You have to look at ROI and how long does that pay? And is it 2 or 3 years? And that was a learning curve for me because I also wanted that comfort of knowing when I added a doctor, it'd pay for itself. or I added a back in the early stages in OCT. Boy, that was a scary step. Big payment for that time,
Yeah.
but it worked and it provided a much higher level of patient care. I also think something we went through later in the growth cycle, just recently, we do want to provide care to everybody, but at the same time, you have to manage your business well in order to have the resources to provide care to the truly indigent that need it, as well as the people that can pay for it. And it had just outgrown the amount of time spent day to day had outgrown what I was able to provide and continue to see patients.
Say a little bit more about that balancing effort. Tell me what that means to you and how it's kind of manifested.
Well, it's really being good stewards of our practice, I think. You know, making sure that we maximize not maximize, I guess, really control our cost so that we're efficient and we're hitting the parameters we want to, that our practice has profitability that allows our 48 staff members and 5 doctors to have the quality of life they kind of expect and still leave margin and money in the practice to allow us to see that patient who was without a job and provide glasses. It's kind of that balancing act and, really cost control and what your staff looks like. All those things require a lot of time. And I felt very competent when we opened. It was myself, one full-time and one part-time. I have direct oversight. Now with multiple clinics and all that, I couldn't do that. And not only could I not do that, I don't have the business acumen. Even if I had the time, I wasn't trained. I'm not experienced in business. And so I had to maybe have that little gut check of, I'm not doing this as well as I should.
Yeah. So how'd you overcome that? Right. I think that's, first off, commend you. That's really insightful. That seems to be a trend with a lot of our guests who have gone from that 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and beyond I realized I don't know everything and I needed the help. I might be putting words in your mouth, but how did you come to that realization and what'd you do about it once you came to that realization?
So you're not putting words in my mouth. That's spot on. And we really said, okay, what position do we need? And what does that look like? And what is that person like? And we started a search and really, on one hand, I'm going to tell you, we got really lucky because our first hire was the right person, but not the first person we interviewed and considered and didn't make an offer to. So we hired a COO, CFO, and we knew, back to that making an investment, I really thought, that's a well-compensated position to hire somebody that does it right. And we knew that we would, quote unquote, lose money by having that position, or it wouldn't pay for itself initially. But gosh, we're a year in and we've been really surprised and reached where we thought we'd be in 2 years and a year. So I think it's giving up that control and realizing you don't know everything, and then seeking out a person. We talked at the very beginning about values. That person needs to have values that align with yours if it's going to work. And I think you also have to have a way to still have some control. I want to make the final decision, but I also had to relinquish control. If I say I'm not doing it right, I can't continue to say, well, my idea is right.
Dude. Okay. And when this person came on board, I imagine, tell me about the emotions. Tell me about how that interaction was between you and this person. Is it he or he or
It's a
she?
he.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
So
a he.
tell me about him and you and the interaction, and tell me about the struggles. Like what happened? And you're like, okay, this is a little harder than I thought, or where was it easier than you thought?
Well, the easier parts, we saw the gains, and we've added a location and 2 doctors already in this year, and we have plans for future growth. So that's the easy part, right? He really came in and took control of what we needed to and sent us on the right path. And I wasn't dealing as much with the day-to-day staff issues and really made some changes that gave us more stability. That's the easy part. The hard part is, I think anytime you're entrepreneurial, you feel like you have a good plan and you feel like what you're doing is the right thing, or you probably wouldn't be doing it. And in this case, I had to let a lot of that go. And the way I was approaching things I had to step back and I worked really hard, and it was hard for me to stay quiet in the beginning. I shouldn't say stay quiet, be able to say, okay, well, this is your idea. I think we should do this, but we're going to try it your way. Now, I think along with that, you have to be able to realize if we fail, we're going to fail fast. We're going to have that constant oversight. And if it's not working, we'll look for a plan B or C. So that was the hard part. And then it's just going to sound kind of crazy. And I'm still very busy, but I was like busy every moment of every day and almost felt a little bit of guilt that I wasn't continually working on the practice because I didn't have to be.
Let's talk about that a little bit because I'll share with you some lessons that I've been learning. Is that the more you get into the strategy and more about working, on the business versus in the day to day. Some of the famous, more popular ways of doing it is actually building in more time to think and more separation. So you almost have to have that free time to be able to go to the next step in your business. Have you found that to be something that's helpful for you, that because it was freed up, it was like, okay, what did you shift your time? You shifted on growing the business. Was that helpful? Did you find it tough? Like, how did you make that mental switch? Talk to us about that journey.
It was tough. I felt like I was very regimented. I know that I need to be up at this time to do this, to do this, to do this, to do this. And I didn't have time to think. I was very reactionary instead of forward thinking, which has always been my strong suit. But I was really surviving going from fire to fire. And so it was hard for me I felt like I was missing something because I wasn't going from fire to fire. Right. And now I'm in a position where I do have time to think, okay, if we want to grow, how do we want to grow? What does that model look like? Where does it make strategic sense? I have more time, as you said, free time to think and let that happen. And for my particular case, I mean, we all have strengths and weaknesses, right? And I think we all think we can do it all. But I realize that I am in this process. I'm good at big picture. This is where we need to be in 6 months. Where I'm not good is the day-to-day details, making sure that we get there in 6 months. And the person we hired has been a great compliment to that.
Gotcha. That's awesome. What was it that really drove you to grow? I know we've talked about your growth itself, but why do that? Why put yourself through this stress and strain? And also, real quick, how many locations do you currently have?
We currently have 4 locations.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a lot, right? You're going from 1 to 4.
Yes.
Why do it? What drove you, Shane, to really do that?
I think I'm very proud. And when I say that, I'm not talking about myself. All of our providers, all of our staff, I'm very proud of the kind and the level of care we provide. And in a rural community, we saw really need for that care. And I think we really impact patients' lives. And I wanted to be able to deliver that in the best possible way we could. That would be the reason we grew the way we have.
I've always heard it position. It sounds like I think it was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's basically with sufficient why, you can suffer through any how. Basically meaning like, hey, if you got a why, it makes it a lot easier to do things. Is that I'm kind of hearing that in some of your tones, like, hey, I really care about these people. I really care about my community, and that's why you keep driving. Is that accurate to say? Am I
No, you're exactly right. I do really care about the community. I didn't grow up right here, but I grew up in Southeast Kansas, and a lot of my family's here. And, we're definitely a flyover state. But at the same time, I can't think of a better place to live. And I want to give back to a community that's given so much to me.
a Chiefs fan, are you?
Oh, no. I was not there Sunday night.
No.
I can tell you that I'm old to get home
Yeah.
and get to bed at 2:30 and get up and be in clinic at 8, but man, was it worth it.
That was a good game. Hey, for those of you listening, this was shortly after the AFC Championship in 2005. So if you need a time reference, so let's go back a little bit to some of the challenges you're facing. The costs are going up, reimbursement staying flat or down. What are you doing with your multiple locations to help combat that? To really drive, making sure it's a win-win, like you said, taking care of the business, taking care of the patients, taking care of staff. How do you manage all that with increasing cost and lower reimbursements?
A few things really fall into that. There's economy of scale, right? So the more we're doing things, the better off we are. I'm a member of Vision Source. I'm an administrator for our area. That's really helped us control our costs as well as we can, right? They're still going up because they're going up for everybody, but I think that's played a part in that kind of partnership that allows us to work with other practices and learn from them. Um, we've really empowered our staff. And I think when I mentioned we made some changes, we're hiring more full-time people at maybe higher levels than we've paid, but we're saying in order for us to do that, we need more from you. And having that frank discussion has helped us control some staffing costs, and I think perform in a more efficient, maybe better way than we have. And then there's always looking at how do you provide care that drives patients back? How do you see patients more efficiently? What can you do? And I think that's one thing that optometry, we all love people, right? That's kind of a stalwart of our profession. But what can we delegate and then use our resources to better assimilate the data versus just collect the data?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, I moved to a scribe, and it was I didn't know what patients would think of that, right? It's a big change. My scribe is key to my day, but I could see more patients, about 17% more volume in a day. But then what was really interesting when I looked back, our premium product went up in sales because I had more time to talk to the patient. I was really explaining the benefits. Those are little things that we look at.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that was before it got popular to do virtual scribes. So
Yes.
you're
Oh,
ahead
yeah.
of the curve. What are you doing now that might be ahead of the curve? I'm curious. Anything that you can share that's not a proprietary secret?
Yeah. What are we doing now? We're adding new technology as far as devices. We're looking at how we're adjusting our schedule. If you present and need a CT scan at your orthopod, the answer is going to be they're going to schedule the CT scan. They're going to come back and see the orthopod, and he's going to go over that test because it's in front of him. That allows minimum time in the office, minimum doctor time. So we're building separate schedules where we're collecting visual fields, OCTs. Then we're reviewing that with the patient at a follow-up. That allows us more time with the patient. It also allows more revenue generation without tying up physician time in the practice. And I think that's a big step forward for us. I think there's some software out there that is image management that we're moving to. Harmony software. I don't know if you're familiar with that from Topcom. It's an interesting concept. It's agnostic of device. So whether you have Zeiss, you have OptiView, Optos, all that image management can then be downloaded and come up on one screen. So I think there's better patient care because I'm seeing the field and the image and the OCT at the same time. And there's also, by our calculations, about 3 to 4 minutes a patient saved because I'm opening one software, not multiple. And I think that helps us with efficiencies.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So looking at it from both from a patient experience and efficiency, so it's almost like a win-win. And you're not looking at it just as a pure, how can I cut time or staff? It's how can we do our patient experience better? And it just happens to save time and be more efficient.
Well, and to not sound like a Topcon commercial, the other thing that they're doing is they're using it as a platform where other vendors can put software on it. And so maybe we're looking at the aging process and it'll measure, a company brings them, let's call it an app that will look at aging or risk for Parkinson's. That can then be downloaded onto this platform so we can offer our patients more tests. AI can be involved. All those things, that's the basis. I always think about like an iPhone with different apps.
Yeah.
So I think that moves us ahead.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And maybe they should sponsor this podcast after this.
Yeah.
And so we have a couple of top con products and they've been pretty good too. So, and I think you're right. I think the future is more, it's really going to be interesting to see where this all goes with technology because AI enables a lot more than initially we thought. So I think you're going to see a lot more rapid adoption of technology over the next 5, 6 years because AI is going to make it a lot easier. And you don't have to have like, oh, we have to have the top cons and Zeisses in the world to create this software to integrate. Then you're going to see ways of doing it that aren't going to need a big player of that.
Oh, no, and I think we also have to. I think sometimes we pigeon ourselves as this vision care provider, and we forget that we're not. We're really health providers. I can make an argument we're the best value in healthcare as far as the amount of disease and early intervention and outcomes we can provide for the costs or the burden to healthcare, and we need to learn to maximize that more and get outside of our box and think that way.
Yeah. So are you alluding to maybe expanding scope of services or just maximizing
I
practice
think
to
I
scale?
think both, right? Building relationships with primary care, rheumatology, all those. How do we better partner with the subspecialists in ophthalmology or even general ophthalmology? And then how do we expand our scope? If we've been trained to do certain things and there's a shortage of providers that can do that, why aren't we pushing that envelope and learning to provide the best possible outcomes? And at the same time, always holding ourselves and our profession accountable to function at this very high level.
Yeah. That's that's an interesting perspective. So kind of getting into that right now, the workflow for most optometrists is I can't see very well. I might need readers or I need an updated brand glasses prescription. Who takes my VSP or iMed? Where can I go? Let me get in that way. What I'm hearing is a different way, a different channel. Like, hey, why aren't you partnering with specialists, with internal medicine doctors to be a point of contact for the more advanced scope things like dry eye, myopia control, or specialty care, glaucoma management, whatever it might be. Is that kind of what you're saying about expanding the
Well,
business?
exactly. And I will give you a great example. And if you look at the current Diabetic Association guidelines, they say if moderate or above retinopathy is detected, they need referred to retina.
Hmm.
Here's the reality. There, if you and I cannot substantiate this with a study, though we're looking to change that. If you give me 200 patients with moderate or above retinopathy, maybe 10 actually need intervention from retina. The rest should be followed in primary eye care,
Yeah,
sent when they need intervention.
interesting.
That's a
Yeah,
different model.
yeah, that is. How do you keep the patients with the optometrist for primary care for eye health?
Which is the best delivery method for our patients.
Yeah, I don't being married to an optometrist, I don't disagree. So
Well, no,
yeah,
but it does. It provides better outcome. It removes the burden from retina, so they're actually doing what they should be doing and delivering the care only they can. It's better patient access. We're more distributed across the geography of the country, um, and it's a lower burden of cost to healthcare. And it grows your practice because then they need a VSP exam and glasses, and you'll provide that, but you're also managing this disease state.
yeah. In the intro, I talked about how you do help people with the practice management side of the business. And so many times you think about, oh, you're going to teach me how to read a P&L and do all those. I think it sounds like you do some of that. But do you ever get into like, hey, this is your go-to-market strategy? And that's something you don't hear about so much in optometry, but we're describing as more of almost like a go-to-market strategy of how you're going to run your business and what channels you're going to service.
We have really started to reach out and do some of that. And so we're
Okay.
kind of looking at this combined. I help young doctors or even some established doctors reinvigorate themselves. But then we're looking at the COO, CFO we brought in, and how can we make our practice is large enough? We need him a lot of the time. But how can we create a position where he can be a fractured COO? So if you're a one doctor practice, maybe you can hire him to provide that P&L oversight you need, but then you can be focused on the care and building those relationships that need to happen.
Okay. Excellent. Um, so I guess let's brainstorm together for a second. I'm curious just to get your thoughts on this. If you had to double, triple, quadruple, I'll let you choose how big you want to get in a very short amount of time. How would you approach that right now in the market that you're in, or in the current environment that we're in with optometry? How would you do that? Like, let's brainstorm a little bit. I kind of want to see how your brain thinks and works through problems.
So I'll tell you right now, we're looking at two opportunities. One is in a rural setting, smaller than where we're at, a small town, a well-established doctor, maybe entering the final part of his career, but can we come in, help manage that, take him through that twilight and relieve some burden from him? Now, the advantages to that situation are well-established practice, actually functioning pretty well, and I think we can step into that easily. Now, the difficulty is, can you make sure you have a doctor willing to be there in this small community when he retires? And there's limited upside for growth because there's a fixed population. And we're looking at another practice in a rapidly growing area. That's different than what we have. It's in a little bit larger community, more upside for growth, but we're starting without as much there. But it's a different mentality for us, but I still think the level and the kind of patient care we deliver is different. So I think if we put it there, it grows well. So we're trying to weigh out those two options. How do I look at that and what do I say we want to do? I think we really want to look at a two-part situation. If you grow in the small communities, that builds your base and lets you generate revenue to have those startup practices that take a little longer to grow, but have more upside. So it's kind of a combination.
Nice. So it's almost not a one size fits all, but hey, let's see how we're going to approach the market and go from there.
Yeah. And what does each bring to what we already have?
Interesting. So I imagine that when you approach a Medicaid office in rural Louisiana versus New York City high-end boutique, you're probably going to go with very different approaches in terms of how you recommend growth.
Yeah. Oh, there's 100%. Even where we're at, Pittsburgh to you is a small town, but it's really a hub for this region we're in. So what we have in our Pittsburgh offices is different than what we have in maybe our more rural satellite, which is going to be more agricultural, manufacturing based.
And that's Pittsburgh, Kansas, right?
Yes.
Okay, just for clarification.
Yes.
I mean, they're like, no, Pittsburgh's a big town. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's still a town. Yeah. No, different Pittsburgh.
Cool. No H on the end. Yeah.
No. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears just a little bit. I want to learn a little bit more about you, Shane. And what can you share with me a story or two that you feel made you who you are? An example I like to give is like, hey, it could have been your first day at a new school when you were younger. Could have been a course in college. But something that you felt like, oh, that made an impression on me to the point where it kind of runs a little bit of some of my ethos came from that moment. What would a moment like that be?
Two moments I'll share with you, and one will make me sound like a really screwed up has-been high school athlete, and then the other's more relevant. But we're playing an undefeated team my senior year. It's a big rivalry. Some things happened. I got lucky. I broke a run, and I was going to be the first person to score on them, probably a 50-plus yard run. I let up about the 5-yard line, and there was a gentleman that's a great guy, incredibly fast, ran track in college, caught me from the back, tackled me on the 2 because I let up, and then a series of penalties we didn't score. I can't tell you how many times I've thought of that in my life. You can't let up just because you think you're about to do something good. You have to continue to push. Don't assume something's going to happen. I know that's a silly moment, but that really resonates with my drive going forward. Second thing that happened, we lost our oldest child to leukemia. We went through a lot. She went through a lot of trials in a 6-year period. We were all over the country. My wife and daughter would go. I would stay here with the twins. But we could really see that diversity of healthcare and who was focused. And that's how my interest in clinical research really got piqued, and we started doing these studies. It was a moment where I realized there's people whose guiding principle is what revenue can I generate, and there's people whose guiding principle is how do I provide the highest care and the best relationship with this patient, and I knew which I wanted to be.
I'm sorry for your loss, Shane.
She was a great kid. I love talking about her. I don't say that as a downer. but I say that in the fact that it shapes your life.
Tell me your favorite memory of her. You remember?
So she was in treatment at Philadelphia. I mean, I have a million favorite memories of her, but she was in treatment in Philadelphia, and I had flown up to be with her. We took the train over. She was a big Hamilton lover. I got tickets to see Hamilton on Broadway. We kind of had a dad-daughter Nate night. It was an incredible night for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Sounds like a fun time.
that was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can see where a lot of the care comes. Like, I think a lot of people say they care about patients, but it comes across from your genuineness. Like, it really feels like, hey, you know what? You care about everyone you come in touch with. And I think that probably translates pretty well with your staff and your patients and across the board.
I think we sometimes in our profession forget, oh, you got something in your eye, I'm going to see you the next day. Will you be the person with uncontrolled pain, or your child with uncontrolled pain? Or maybe you have this really large floater and we have a pretty good idea what it is, but we're not going to see it for 4 days. How does the patient feel? How afraid are they? How unfamiliar are they with what's going on? And our job is to be there for them.
Yeah. How do you, shifting back a little bit, this kind of triggered another question for me. How do you hire for that, train for that? Like, because you have 4 locations, you can't be everywhere all at once. How do you keep that special touch?
I think the biggest part of that is the people that you work with, right? And so you need to be able to bring in people that you feel have your values, and need to be willing, if they don't, to move to the next person. And I think that holding them to that standard, and I really think if you hire people based on their attributes and train them to the position, you're going to be much better than if you just bring in experience or people who understand it.
Yeah. I've had this similar experience. So I'd rather hire for attitude and skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Like both. I'll pick attitude over skills.
I can teach you skills.
Yeah. So let's time travel a little bit. It's 4 days after you graduate OD school. What advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now?
You have the ability to shape, I think, our profession more than most. You have the ability to shape your profession, your work experience, and what you're doing every day. If you look at our profession, there's so much diversity. And I think some people get caught up in I hate to say a rut, but this routine, and then they're not happy because it's not the routine they wanted. We have the ability to make our practice and our work life what we want it to be. So take a deep breath, experience a lot of things, and find out what makes you happy. Because just because what I'm doing makes me happy doesn't mean it makes the next person happy. Experience a lot, figure out what you want, and then build your life around that.
I think the theme of today, if this kind of conversation, would be wisdom, not knowledge, right? I think that knowledge is easy. It seems like things that you're saying are rooted in experience and wisdom. So I appreciate you sharing all that. And it's really, I think we could have a whole nother podcast around your business insights too, and how that goes. Maybe we'll bring you back in for season 2 to have a continuation on this. So
awesome.
So where can people find you, Shane, if they want to get connected?
The search Kannarr EyeCare, Pittsburgh, Kansas, that you'll find our website. You can link right to it. The email goes to the office, but just leave any email you want to talk to me. Or it's as simple as askkannar@kannareyecare.com. I'm pretty good about checking that email. So
Ask Kannarr. So ASKK.
SKANNARR @kannareyecare.com. I could not have had a longer email if I'd have tried.
We'll put that in the show notes too for people if they want to reach out to you directly. And again, thank you so much, Shane, for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, and thank you, audience. If you learned anything, laughed, cried, feel free to subscribe and share the podcast with anyone you know, or the YouTube video if you're watching that on YouTube. And thank you again, Dr. Kannarr. This has been another exciting episode of Optometrists Building Empires. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.